Frankie.
Ian, you son of a...
Frankie, how's it going, buddy? You got some bags under your eyes. You look tired, homie.
So the things that are worrying Ian and I these days are baseball cards and the oncoming recession. So if you're curious what we talk about behind the scenes, it's a lot about baseball, trading cards, and what's going on in the market. We came up with a new segment a week ago. We call it News versus Noise, which is something I've been talking to my team about, and I love that name.
Did you like it? Did you like what I
love
like
it. I absolutely love it.
I stole it from you, brother.
It's perfect.
You didn't know you came up with it, but I stole it from you.
I wouldn't have thought that we should name it that, but we're doing a segment now, and we're going to call it News versus Noise. And there's a lot of noise, and there's a lot of bullshit. There's a lot of things that are going on, but like, what's the news associated with it, right? So, like recession talk. We're in the middle of it. I'm in the home building sector, and the home building sector was frothy for a very long time. It was like irrational for a while, and there was a huge run up. And now interest rates have changed drastically, so your buyer base is changing, and the market's different. So what we look at in our business is, how can we sell things? And it's just not as easy as it was. So are we doing anything irrational? No, but I've grown a business from being just me 14 years ago to having over 50 people today. So there's different pressures and there's different things you have to pay attention to. So those are the things that I'm thinking about. Is like, where's the market? What's going on with the market? And more importantly, how are we going to make it through and thrive? But those are not easy things to do. But they forced you to really get focused and to make some changes.
So Frankie was telling me that he got up at like 3 a.m. and came down, and part of that is because he drank a load of wine 2 nights ago, and he hasn't slept well in a couple of nights. But the more he was honest with me, he's got a lot on his mind. He's got a big payroll. He's got a big company. Just moved into a brand new office, which is beautiful in Richmond, which I'm a part owner of. I'm very proud of that. But that's all well and good. You look at it from the outside and you think, oh, wow, he's American success story. It's fantastic, but that's a big ass payroll. That's a lot of expenses. Frank, to own the number of assets that Frank owns, that's a lot of debt. That's a lot of interest he has to pay. So it's not like Frank can just sit back and chill with those kind of expenses. You got to keep hustling. You got to keep bringing in revenue, or something has to change. So I guess as you look at 2022 is winding down, and we've talked about this several times, that recession, we're probably in it right now, but the real estate market hasn't felt it hard yet, but you're starting to see cracks everywhere in the real estate market. But I would say real estate market's in like the early first or second inning of a little downturn here that we're going to see. But as you kind of look at your business today and you look at going into 2023 as you plan, what's got you most nervous?
You're listening to Let Me Speak to a Manager with Frank Cava and Ian Mathews.
What a crock of shit.
Yeah, that was hot mic, Sam.
You can't say God here.
Don't worry, nobody's listening anyway.
Do it live! I'll write it and we'll do it live!
So what can you rely on is what makes me the most nervous. And what I mean by that is we've got a business, we're 14 years in, and we know we can dispose of properties in a certain way, or we know what a value of a property is right now. It's really, really easy to be in a rising market, because you buy something during the period of speculation, the period of like value add, the market goes up. So if material prices go up, or if you hold it for longer, you've got an opportunity to not lose money, or maybe even make more, because the market's rising faster than your screw ups are costing you. So what happens in that instance is you got to be very mindful when the market shifts. You've got to be very mindful of where you're buying it and where you're going to sell it. Like in my business, we buy property, we add value to it through renovation in most instances, and then we sell it, right? You've seen the TV shows, the pictures, the before and afters, like that's what we do. But there's 3 ways that you can get it wrong. You can buy it at the wrong price, You can spend more on the house through either holding it for too long or construction costs costing more than you anticipated. And you can sell it for the wrong. You can guess what you're going to sell it for is higher than you actually sell it for. Number three has been out of the picture for 2.5, 3 years, really for about 10 years. It was you were flat or you're going up for the last 10 years. So now you're selling into a market where you don't know where the price is going to be. So what you have to look at in a lot of instances right now is what is certainty? And certainty comes with speed. So what we're doing now is we're selling some stuff that's in inventory that we've been carrying for a year because you got to go back to the city and you got to get a permit and then you've got to renovate it. And what we're looking at now is inventory that we can move much faster. It's not going to take a year, or can I pre-sell it? So you've got to really looking at what are you saying yes to? It's critical. That's a big thing. And then what will the market buy it for? That it's also a moving target, and you've got to adjust to that. So what you used to take for granted in a different market, now you've got to spend a lot of time thinking about.
So let's compare this a little bit to the stock market, because I imagine most people that listen to this show pay attention to the stock market, if not owning, 401k and stocks themselves, and just about everyone's down 30-some%. But when a recession's coming, there's, what you hear is flight to quality. And that means people make less speculative bets. They're not betting on companies that aren't making profit. They're not betting on companies that have high earnings to price ratio, price to earnings ratios. They normally go to like more stable company, consumer goods, right? You think about Nestle, Procter and Gamble, things people need, necessities, right? Because that's a recession.
Costco.
I only spend money on the necessities.
That's right.
A lot of what you normally see too is you see a lot of money go into companies that pay a dividend, because now I'm getting cash a little bit. And what that's saying is, I don't care if my stock goes up much. I just don't want it to go down a lot, and I want to get a little bit of cash back. So you just see people change, right? When you're in a go-go economy, you're buying the high-tech stuff that's earnings might not happen for 5 years. All the money's been sucked out of that. So I've seen that change in the equity market, and I don't know. It doesn't really change how I invest. I invest in companies that generate a ton of cash and, reinvest that cash into their stock anyway. So I haven't really repositioned a lot of my stock. I've got rid of a few of the things that were more speculative bets. But in your world, it's interesting. You're going from a real estate market where all of it worked. Fix and flips worked, retail worked, wholesale worked, buy and hold and collect rent worked. There's not an aspect of real estate that didn't work for 5 years. And that's what zero rates from the Fed does, right? And lots of stimulus. But in the world you're going into in 23, I have to imagine there's going to be a flight to quality. And I wonder what you consider quality to be in a world like 2023.
So this is going to get a little bit granular, but I think Ian does a really good job of taking it more macro after I make it granular. So granular. In the last downturn, people lost their jobs en masse, and they needed to find things to do. I think cable television, I've said this before, but I think cable television played a huge role in creating the gig worker or the gig economy, but it goes further than driving an Uber. The gig economy also, because of like Anthony Bourdain, everyone thinks they're a foodie. So now you can have a small little restaurant that you can get for almost no rent in a recession, and you can try out all kinds of crazy food. And that can become that your passion project can become your full-time job. And we saw that, like shitty little places like Richmond, Virginia now has awesome food. But so does every other place in America, because of cable TV, wanted to be more exploratory with what they ate. And these little businesses became thriving businesses, and now there's great food everywhere because of it. So that's an example, right? How does that relate to real estate? Cable television said fix or flip, flip or sell, fixer upper. There's hundreds of TV shows. Literally, I think the bad rapper from the 90s, Vanilla Ice, has 2 different shows on how to flip real estate. Like that shows you we're at peak market. So the point is this: a bunch of people that had jobs they didn't like that got fired figured, hey, I've always had an eye for interior decorating, or I spent a summer on a carpentry crew. So now they buy houses and they renovate them. And what I do is I find houses that they want to renovate and I sell it to them. But what I need to understand is how good of business people were these people? Were they a carpenter that was really good with math? Or are they a carpenter that sucks at math and they were getting lucky? And I've got to figure out, can I still rely on that person to buy my stuff? Or do I need to figure out another way to sell it? And what we're doing in real time is trying to sell it to the person that had the job but for 10 years has flipped houses. And if it doesn't work, what's the pivot point to a different way to dispose of it? Because our overhead is significant and we need to make revenue every single month. So we've got some of it in the can already through our rentals that we collect and our property management fees and other things that are a little longer term. But you've got to have active money coming in the door, and that you have uncertainty around that. And that's what you have. That was my best way of explaining it.
If you look at all of your assets, are you looking to shed any percentage of them right now to try to lighten the number of assets that you go into 2023 with?
Yes. So one of the things I preach at the company is take what the market gives you. And I've talked about it here. We did a huge refinance, like 200 doors, and we refinanced it at under 3.75% interest, all of it, on 30-year fixed terms. So what does that mean in English? The debt is super cheap, and it's fixed until I'm 76 years old. Well, I'm in my 40s. That's
how much debt. How much debt did you refi at 3.75?
Under almost 40 million.
$40 million of debt at 3.75. That's crazy. You think about that. If you wanted to go out and get a $600,000 home loan right now, one home, a lot less risk than that, you'd be paying 7%. So the average person, if they tried to get 40 million debt, one, they couldn't because they don't have Frank's track record. But they'd be playing closer to 10%, hard money rates just a few months ago to get that kind of debt. And that, for you, what was your average handle on that debt before it was 3.75? Was it like 6, 7?
Somewhere between 6 and 7.
And so what does that save you per month in interest cost?
So per house, that saves me, I haven't modeled it at 7, but where I used to be to where I am now, it changed it by like about $350 per house per month. So you multiply 350 times 200 times 12, it's significant.
Yeah, what was that?
Well over a million.
70,000 a month.
It's like 800.
350 times 200, 70,000 a month. So $840,000. I mean, massive amount of real expenses, like real cash flow, accretive expenses by making that change.
Yes, and you did nothing different. It's not like you have to operate differently. Just who you mail the check to. So we've got that locked. I'm going to hold on to those forever because that is really low debt, really low debt. That
what's interesting is that debt instrument has now become an asset.
Yes, it has.
Almost more valuable than the houses. The fact that you have that loan, let's say rates kept going up 7, 8, 9, someone that wants to compete with Frank, why would Frank sell those where taking on any new houses would double his interest payments? He wouldn't.
Right. Now's not a time to acquire rentals. Now's the time to generate cash. But so what Ian said is, how am I going to lighten up my balance sheet? Right. The things that are locked in and fixed aren't going anywhere. But the stuff that has variable rate debt, meaning it's not locked for 30 years. Like it might be
your expenses have been increasing every friggin' month the last 3-4 months on it.
So they could be locked temporarily. Like I've got like a 5-year lock on a bunch of stuff. But we're 18 months.
You probably have some stuff at 12 months, 6 months. You have some probably monthly variable stuff.
So everything else that I have as a rental is either on short-term debt that needs to be refinanced, or it's financed with a local bank, and the local bank has 5-year resets. So I did most of this a year and a half ago. So I've got 36 months to 48 months left before it resets. But the opposite of saving $350 a month, that does reset. I have to spend $300 or $400 or $500 more. It depends on how high it goes, or $500 more to just simply carry the home. So what I'm doing now is how I'm lightening it up, not how I'm going to generate cash, is I'm going to sell that. So
that's interesting. So you're making a decision to shed some assets based on the type of debt it has, and not so much zip code or age of the property, or whether it's a rental or a fix.
So if it's a fix and flip, or if it's a rental, that's differentiated by pricing box. So if it's a flip, it's still a flip. But I'm literally looking at my balance sheet based upon where is the bank, what's the debt instrument look like, and if it doesn't have a longer term debt instrument, those are the things I'm moving.
Okay, I got it. So are you going to change when you look at your criteria of what you acquire or what you keep?
Mm-hmm.
Are you going to, in an expanding market, you kind of expand your criteria, you widen out your radius of where you'll buy, you kind of maybe buy, you'll buy on the fringe because there's so much competition in the center of town. Are you going to look to maybe tighten that radius a little bit closer to where your office is?
So I refer to this as the lasso. So almost everybody has seen a map and knows where Washington, D.C. is, right? Washington, D.C. lasso, an hour in every direction will take you into Virginia or Maryland, or maybe like even up into into Pennsylvania in some instances, right? I don't think you hit West Virginia in an hour, but if you took it out 2 hours, you had West Virginia, you had Pennsylvania, you go into deeper parts of Virginia. An hour versus 2 hours matters for this reason. When the last recession happened, the lasso around Washington, D.C., where Ian and I both lived during it, tightened. People would drive 2 hours. They no longer wanted to drive. No one wants to drive 2 hours to and from work. It's miserable. But they were willing to, because that's where they could afford it, and that's where their kids could have a yard. But then what happens is, in a recession, people that are talented are still employed, and they have better choices. So the lasso tightens. The market at 2 hours out goes away, or greatly diminishes, so the price goes way down. The things closer to the city center, you could buy something in the last recession, 30 minutes from Washington, D.C., that was the same price as what was 2 hours from Washington, D.C. So the lasso around cities tightens. So what we do in this part of the market is we do not speculate in anything other than the absolute best parts of town.
Yep.
We go after the best neighborhoods, the best schools, the best of the best of the best. So like we will literally speculate in about a 5-mile radius in Richmond, and that is it. If I've got a
flight to quality,
boom. Same thing of like trading in speculative stock to Costco or Apple. I don't know if either of those pay a dividend, but they both have tons and tons and tons of cash, and they're market dominant. So that's exactly what we do during this segment of market. Now, the other thing we do that I think is interesting is I want to buy houses that do not require a permit. Now, I don't want to break the rules. I want to follow the rules, and I want to do what the city and the municipalities require. But what I'll do is I will pay a lot of attention to what kind of work is needed. Is it a lipstick job? That doesn't require a permit. Like if I take out the cabinets and put new cabinets in, and I paint it, you don't need a permit for that. You get to just keep going. So speed drastically changes. So real estate moves much slower than the stock market. As we're recording this, the stock market went up 1,500 points in 2 days. What percentage was that, Ian? What was the percent move in the market when it goes up 1,500 points in 2 days?
It was like maybe a percent, maybe a percent and a quarter.
Market's trading at what, 30? Is it right? Is S&P? Yeah.
We didn't go up 1,500 in 2 days though. It was up and down during the middle of the day, but the actual close, it didn't. It maybe moved a few points in a couple of days, but
I wasn't sleeping.
That's right after it went down 4. So
sure,
it's
it went down a shitload. But I mean, when we're recording this, it went up 7 and it went up 8. I was watching Kramer this morning at 4:00 in the morning, is a plus 1,500 in 2 days, which when the market's trading at 30,000, that's a 5% move in a couple of days. Now it's been a downward slide before the move. But the point of the matter is the stock market is liquid. It can move 5% in 2 days. Real estate doesn't. Real estate might move 5 or 10% over 6 to 12 months. So if you can get in and out of an asset in 90 days, which is a quarter, and you don't need a permit, you can do that. And what you have is an ability to know what your downside is. That becomes insanely critical. Like if you buy a $100,000 house and I know, okay, this can drop 10% in the period of time, I can then build my numbers around that. And Ian's better with the stock market than me. And this is just news that I watched this morning. But that's what you have to factor is, okay, here's where my profit is. Here's where I think it's going to sell for. This is my profit number. And my profit number needs to be big enough to also allocate for a potential down. So I'll just tell you this. I've been doing this for 14 years. My average profit is 17% on a flip. That includes my losses, includes everything. My absolute best houses are like 30 to 40% profit, but those are super rare. But 17% is the number. So if I can get in and get out at 17, and I know I can drop 10%, I'm getting my money back and I'm still going to have a little bit of profit. And I just need to find houses where I can do that quickly. That's how we're analyzing what we're selling or buying.
But as you look at 2023, so again, I'm going to press you on this.
Yeah.
In 2021, you would look at a house that you might have to put $200,000 into, and you're going to build it into a luxury home. Yep. Is that kind of off your plate when you're going into a recession and saying, not sure I'm doing that with mortgage rates where they're at and, kind of a messy supply chain?
Stupid. So what you're actually asking me, the way that I would summarize this is, am I going to change who I build a house for? And the answer to that is hell yes. Right now, I'm building for a discretionary second or third time move up or a luxury move up buyer. So I'm selling houses that are $750,000 to $1.3 million. To put this in perspective for you, I've sold 2 houses over 900. If you include personal residences, I sold 3 houses over $900,000 up until 2020. And since 2020, I probably sold a dozen that are over 900,000. We're not going to live in the $900,000 bucket anymore. We're going to live in the $500,000 to $800,000 bucket. And I think that constitutes a product that we know how to build really well, but it opens up the market. So there's really huge profit rips at these big numbers up top, 1.3. Like you make 17% on 1.3, it's a hell of a lot more than making 17% on 100,000. So, but we're going to lower down the affordability box to be able to attract a wider audience. And we're going to do it into the absolute best neighborhoods because they're still desirable in any economy.
Is there a market that it gets so scary that you don't want to build at all? You just want to buy only rentals and hold?
For sure. But with the way my business is currently built, we need to be able to buy. We just need to be able to buy things. So this is what will happen. I'm going to ask you these questions because you're a former mortgage guy. What type of loans typically come about in a downturn?
More government. You'll see more FHA. You'll see more VA loans that come in. You're going to see people squeeze. So you're going to see the market shift from a 30-year fixed market to 5-year arms, 3-year arms. You're going to see buy downs coming in. What happens is builders and sellers will press the buyers to get more and more creative with the financing they use before they drop their price. So they'll try to do anything they can through the mortgage instrument to not have to drop their price. And that'll be more and more creative. Whereas it's been a pretty vanilla 30-year fixed market for a long time now because rates have been so low. At a 7% 30-year fixed, people can't afford the same prices they had today. That's why you're seeing sales have just kind of stopped. So you'll see the mortgages get more and more creative until the sellers just figure out you can't get more creative. We have to drop price. And those that have to sell will drop their price. Those that don't have to sell will continue to live in their house.
So a fundamental thing just happened. You said they'll go to government loans, right? When executive level people get a mortgage, they get a mortgage and it's what's called a conventional mortgage, right? It's somewhat securitized by Freddie and Fannie, but it's mostly banks that do it. And it's a higher dollar, it's a higher ticket value type of a price. Ian and I have covered this before here, but what happens in recessions is the loan mix of government loans goes up, and it goes up significantly because the government wants to keep the market moving, and they don't want housing as a major component of the market. So the government will take on riskier loans, or they'll stimulate a little bit so more people will buy. But what that really means is that the people who can afford $1 million becomes way less than the people who can afford an affordable product. And every market is different. But if you look at FHA limits are pretty high. And in Richmond, they're over 600,000 as an FHA limit. So that still means, as nuts as that sounds, and if you live in a $300,000 house, you're like, that's not affordable. Well, it still is affordable according to the government, and the government will stimulate it. So what we will do is we will continue to do flips, but we'll do it in that market. Now, you asked a question a second ago about, is there a market where we'll stop buying? Perhaps, but most likely not. What we need to do is we got to get more creative about finding the buyer who wants to live there, not find the buyer who wants to turn into a profit center. So we've got to think through, how do we acquire in a way where someone can get an FHA loan on a property that we found below market? And this gets real complicated, but that's where I'm spending my effort. How do we put a deal together with a seller who's motivated, or we can connect the dots directly to a buyer who needs a government loan?
Why wouldn't you go all in? Why even focus on the 5 to 800 range, which I think is going to be in trouble in the next couple of years? Mm-hmm. Why wouldn't you go all in on 150 to 350 and try to just find tenants, people that kind of, that even in a really ugly recession, they'll keep their jobs. Why don't you try to find more that, Section 8 housing, find more in that world and invest heavy there?
So the answer to that is we're going to keep doing that. But you can't, if you're crushing it on a Section 8 house, you're making net $300 or $400 a month. When you have the overhead that we have, you can't do that at scale. You would need
a lot more debt to really go heavy into that, because the payments don't come back fast enough.
That's it. It's too small. You're throwing a pebble into the ocean. So it's a combination of those things. You continue to collect rents, and I think that move up buyer is going to just get buried in the next 12 months. When I hear you say 5 to 800,000, you clearly know your business more than I do. I feel like that customer in Richmond is going to just completely dry up for 12 months because they're like you. They don't want to get rid of their house. They're not going to move and give up a 3% mortgage to go get a 7% rent. And that's who a 5 to 800 is. That's someone who's selling. They bought a house for 4, they sold it for 5. They're moving up to get a 750, but they're not going to do that because their payment's going to double with the bigger loan amount and the mortgage rate changing. So what I can tell you is right this minute, I think there's safety in 5 to 800. I do at this minute. Will that change if the stock market goes down 2,000 points today? It could. Maybe that goes lower. But that's why I pay attention to the news, and I look at what's happening in the market, and I look at inventory, and I look at mortgage rates. I was talking to somebody yesterday about mortgages. She's married to a mortgage broker, and they're doing a 2-1 buy down. I'm like, are they doing a 3-2-1 buy down? She's like, no, I've never heard of one of those. I'm like, you will. You'll hear a 5-4-3-2-1 buy down. You hear a 3-2-1 buy down. I was like, how many interest only arms? She's like, no. I'm like, they're coming. So to Ian's point, this stuff is starting to come.
Builders are going to be paying points to buy rates down. They're you're going to see permanent buy downs. And it's going to get expensive for home builders, the concessions, because they're going to want to keep the price where it is. Yep. So they'll buy people's rate down to get them to qualify.
Here's what I can tell you.
You're going to see that big time, Frank. You're going to see builders haven't been spending on good seller help. You're going to see seller help go from half a point maybe on a deal to 3, 4, 5 points, to the point where you're going to be hitting limits all the time. And it's going to make it hard on the qualifying and the mortgage.
100%. And so this is where I want to be positioned. The stuff where I buy and where I flip is in better locations than where builders are. I can buy and build in established neighborhoods around incredibly great schools that is either walkable or shortly drivable to places of work or places of entertainment. Builders are typically on the fringes, and then malls and other things get built later because that's where land is. But that's what's unique about me. And what I do is I look for one-off opportunities in insanely well-established neighborhoods where people want to be. And right now, I think 5 to 800, it's still on the upper tier of the market, but it's safe. But you asked a question like 175 to 350. That's where we lived last time. And if we need to get down there again, we will do it. We'll absolutely do it.
But you're good at that. You're good at that market. You can go play in that market because of your infrastructure, where most people don't want to mess with collecting payments on those folks, or
that's right,
trying to get the subsidies out of the government and the city of Richmond. You're just good at that.
That's it. And that's what we will continue to do. So that's but that's the rental model. There's also a retail model at that price point as well. And we know how to do that too. But there's a more creative way that we didn't know how to do last time, where we have to take less risk. There's a way that we can motivate a seller to let us piggyback on their mortgage, so we don't physically take ownership, and we have an option contract against theirs, and we can sell that to a retail buyer. So what we're trying to figure, what we've gotten better at, or way more sophisticated at, is how to add a great service for the market, help people that need to sell, while mitigating and lowering our risk. And that's what we're going to continue to do. And that's what we're working very hard on now, is how do you open up those channels?
And if you see the revenue is going to be dropping, you have to think about, what did you say? It was $680,000 of overhead a month, including interest.
That was before we were recording, but yeah, I did say that.
Yeah.
We have my overhead number is over 600,000 a month, which is a big number. And that does not include the mortgages that we pay for on the houses that we own as rentals. This is just fixed debt, like debt we have against other properties.
So I bring that up, if you're thinking, wow, it'd be great to be in Frank's shoes and own this big real estate empire, that number's got to weigh on you. You probably don't go a day without thinking about your overhead and your monthly pay and your expenses. And like that, if you're wondering about motivation of a business owner in the real estate market to go find new deals, to find new avenues of revenue, look no further than that number. I mean, that's a number that I can't imagine, and it's kind of grown. It's like the frog getting boiled, over time, where, when you first started, your debt was almost nothing because you were just trying to start a business. You were just working off your assets, but that you built that over 10 years to that point where you've gotten used to and comfortable with that kind of a payroll. But it's natural to wake up at 3 a.m. when that's your monthly overhead, and you're in the real estate business with a looming recession that could get ugly.
So let's pivot into, how do you make sure that your overhead doesn't choke you? There's two ways to make money. You make more or you spend less. So we're sophisticated with an overhead of our size. We're fairly are we as sophisticated as a publicly traded company? Hell no. Are we more sophisticated than someone with a $20,000 a month overhead? Yeah, significantly so. I mean, I've got like 7 people in the accounting department. I've got like 10 people who touch taxes. Like, we're pretty sophisticated for a small company. So what do? We immediately rip out the P&L and we start looking at expenses. And I can tell you where all of our expenses are. And I can also tell you, in a market like this, I used to pay a ton of money for a certain type of advertising that's now on the MLS. So we're going to go there to get it, and we're not going to pay for it. And there's little things you can start to do to take your overhead number down. It was a really, really tight inventory market to buy. So we had to spend a ton more, where now it requires less money and more effort. So those are the things that you have to look at. And you have to look at, okay, how do we get this certain number of revenue, or where can we get our revenue be consistently? And then how much do we need to spend on a regular basis to do that and still have enough left to pay all the bills and actually make a profit? And then it's a constant juggling effort. And what happens is this, like right now is the period of discovery, where we've been talking about recession for a while. The market was still pretty strong. We had a really good Q3. We're having a good Q4. So we got to look at, like, okay, the housing market is shifting. What does it look like for us? And what are the things we need to do to be ahead? how do we be ahead? Like, so we're using Q4 to say, what does 1/1 of 2023 look like? And how do we make sure we're properly positioned?
Frank, you know how like every once in a while you'll go in and you'll go into your phone and look in subscriptions and just kind of scroll down and notice that there's like 4 or 5 apps in there that you're paying $20 a month for that you don't even remember downloading it, just never used it. Are you not, or is that just me? Am I just the only idiot that every once in a while find subscriptions I didn't even know I had?
No, you're not.
Okay, good. Well, I feel like I do this like every 12 to 18 months. I'll just go, like I'll get an email saying this is renewing and I'll say, what even is that? I've never used that. And it's like, you'll be charged $130 on the first of this month. And I'll go look at my subscriptions and I'll say, I got like 7 of those and I'll cancel all of them.
Yep.
And tighten my belt. I found it's the same way. I've managed through 3 pretty ugly recessions. And in every time with a business, you go look at your expenses. And I'm a fan of, simplify it. Go look at your top 10 expenses and try to take 10% out of them. But there's another end, which is the tail end of it, which is go find the stuff that used to make sense in a strong market and get rid of it. So you got to scrutinize as a business owner right now. If you're owning a business or you're running a business, pull out that P&L, like Frank said, and go look at everything that's not giving a return. What made sense in 2020, 2021, 2019, and it's now become a monthly expense. And you look at it and say, is that still serving us? And if it's not, you just start cutting it. You start getting rid of expenses. And unfortunately, that also means people. You have to look, if you're running a business, you have to ask yourself, every employee I have, every contractor I have, am I getting a maximum return out of them? Because if I'm not, and I'm going into a world where revenue is uncertain, I can't have uncertain expenses. That's if that's a person, then they've got to go. If that's an expense in the line item, and that could be anything. It could be publications, it could be software that you pay for, it could be just about anything. But I've always found that you go up, and no one looks at expenses because all you think about is more revenue. And then the tide comes out and revenue drops, and you go look at your expense items on the P&L, and you say, holy, look at all this money we're wasting. And there's normally a ton of low-hanging fruit. Yeah. When the market shifts and you go from being bullish to bearish, which is what's really happened the last 3 months. It's you and I were talking about it, I think, before most were. Yep. Now I'm starting to run into a lot of people that are talking about this a lot. And it's prevailing wisdom that we're in a recession. It could get a lot uglier. And I think when that happens, you go and you tighten up on expenses. And like, these are reasons why Google stock's been hit, Facebook, because people will advertise less. They're doing what you're doing. I'm going to go look to see, how do I spend my advertising dollars on only the best returning stuff and cut it in other places. And I think that's a natural reaction to sentiment changing to a recession.
So there's the scary place to be, which is where you don't have access to any numbers. And then there's the empowered place to be, which is where I think my company is. And we have everything in a metric accounted for, and we know where it is. So what we're doing, instead of just like haphazardly having gut decisions, is we're making really good, strong decisions. So I'm going to give you a couple of quick examples, Ian, some stories that I think you'll find interesting. I remember the last recession. During it, gas prices also spiked and things were going over like $5 a gallon for gas. And this is, 10, 15 years ago. So like everyone was losing their minds. And all these people were like, all right, I'm going to sell our company vehicles and we're going to buy Priuses. And there was a very shrewd businessman that I knew, and he goes, I'm not doing that. I'm like, what are you going to do? He goes, I'm going to buy that old shitty van, new tires, get an oil change, and I'm going to drive it into the ground. And I was like, why? Gas is $5 a gallon. He goes, yep. I'm going to spend a hell of a lot less on gas than I am on a fleet of new Priuses. That is a smart decision. That is someone who, we were sitting down at breakfast and someone looked at that guy and goes, I don't worry about him in a recession. Like, because this is how he thinks.
Well, Frankie, because he valued cash.
Right.
When you go through a recession like this, cash is so critical because what he's saying there is, I'd rather pay a little more monthly and have a big cash balance than go out and suck up a whole bunch of cash and hope to get a return on it over a 4 to 5 year period, by the time you get the return on that, the recession's gone. You might not survive to get a return on a bunch of Priuses if you outlay that kind of a cash out front. To me, as I look at this, I'm conserving as much cash as I can because I want to be able to buy assets on the cheap. I want to be able to get things for pennies on the dollar. So I'd rather have cash now, and I'd rather put debt on things. I'd rather pay in monthly installments, knowing that next year might be a really good opportunity to spend, but it also might be scary. So I want a cushion to be able to get through the year, no problem.
So I'll tell you two funny kind of anecdotes that fit perfectly with this, right? In January, it was either December of 2019 or January of 2020, I bought a Peloton. And I think it was like a Peloton treadmill. I think it cost like $5,000. And there was two options. There was pay $5,000 right this minute, or pay $5,000 over 60 payments with no extra fees, nothing. And I'm not the smartest guy in the world, but I'm like, if you'll take it over 60 payments, I'd rather keep that money in my checking account. And I did. So I still pay it's 2.5-3 years later, I still pay like whatever it is, like $147 a month for my Peloton tread. But think of what's happened in that time frame. We've gone through insane amounts of inflation. So what did I really pay for that treadmill? $2,800. Here's an even cleaner example. I have braces. I have Invisalign. I'm the oldest 13-year-old girl, but when I was sitting down in the orthodontics office, they said, okay, you have two payment options. You can pay for this in one lump sum, or you can pay for it over 16 months, and it's the same price. And I asked the lady who was filling out the form, I was like, seriously? And she goes, yeah. And I said, have you heard of inflation? And she goes, what? And I said, where do I sign? Because like it's an expense. I decided to make it, but to me, it's way less expensive to pay for it in chunks. And there is still places that you can get idiotically smart, like deals like that, where it doesn't make any sense. There's inefficiency. So it's like, don't miss those chances when they're handed to you. Say thank you and sign quickly.
Yeah, I think right now, if I've got the chance to spread some of my cash outlay over a few years where the economy is going to be scary, rather than dwindle all of my cash down, I sleep better at night when I have a big old chunk of cash sitting in the bank. And now's not the time to be 100% invested in anything. You can have a little bit of cash; it'll help you. There are good decisions business-wise. There are risky decisions. But there's also quality of living when it comes to investing, and quality of life. And if I'm not sleeping at night, I'm probably overly invested going into a recession.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean I'm in the wrong things. I don't think stocks are the wrong things. I don't think real estate's the wrong thing. But what I think is you need a level of safety and cushion that makes you not worry about whether the stock market goes up or down. When you ask me what percent it was up or down, it's up, down every day. Like if you sit and watch CNBC all day, you'll think the world is coming to a freaking end. It's
correct.
It's stupid to look at, Warren Buffett doesn't watch CNBC. He doesn't look at the stock market on a daily basis. He looks at it quarterly. He kind of checks to see what's happening, and he kicks everyone's ass because everyone else is worrying and buying and selling based on today's news. And that's sort of stupid. Long term, what I know is Richmond real estate is going to be more valuable than it is today.
That's it.
In 5 years, it probably will be. In 10 years, it 100% will be higher than it is today, especially in a lot of the areas where Frank plays. You can't run your business based on where you think real estate prices are going next year. You have to pay attention. You can't do stupid things, especially if they have a quick exit. But I think you got to take a longer term approach.
Yeah. So what I like to do, Ian, is this, and I actually put it in the chat for you, but I have 10 steps that I follow when money gets tight or when we go into a recession. So I'm going to just go through all 10 and we can talk about them. And I think we can do it quickly. And I think
we've talked enough about it. I say, just go through your 10 and make it really quick. Try to do it in like a speed round. Go through your 10, because I think we've hit most of them already.
All right. First thing, determine the amount needed monthly to break even. It's critical to know. So if that's your household, if you're a business, you need to know what are my expenses every month and what's that number. I don't think we need to talk about that.
Love it.
2, generate cash. So you can generate cash 2 ways, through earnings or through what Ian and I talked about, which is don't buy the Peloton in one lump sum. If you don't need the Peloton right this minute, don't buy it. But if you need it right now, mitigate, keep the cash in the bank. That's number 2. 3, know when it is happening and get ahead. So what we talked about a minute ago is, I think $1.2 million house sales is not the right number for me. I think 500 to 800 is the number, but that's where we're going to be right this minute. If that changes, stay in the know, understand it, and don't fall in love with your losers. So when COVID happened, we had a bunch of houses that we were going to put $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 in. I stopped construction immediately. And I said, let's get these things to market as soon as possible. And we did. Now, ultimately, what happened is the government printed $3 trillion worth of money and they handed it out to everybody and the market went nuts. And we didn't make as much money as everybody else. But you know what we did? We showed. The lady who does my books looked at me and said, next time there's a recession, I want to work here because of how fast we moved. So you take the data, you use it. And if there's, falling out of the sky money, okay, that's an anomaly. But you have to have the right disciplines. You need to move fast. That's number 3. Good?
Because all those companies that made more than Frank during that time got bailed out by the government. If the government had not bailed them out, Frank would have still been fine, just like he was. And he'd have had a lot less competitors to work with. And the next time this happens, Frank will do the same goddamn thing. He will do the conservative approach. And if the government doesn't come in, he will have less competitors.
And that's what we're doing right now. Right size your business. Ian talked about staff. You have to right size your business 2 ways, through staff, and you have to right size your business through spend. You got 7 different internet music accounts, go down to 1. I don't think there's anything there. Renegotiate and then flourish. Ian and I learned this from the best company to learn this from. Like, go into your land deals and just say, hey, I was going to pay you this. I can't pay this now. Take my penalty, or let's work together, and start doing it aggressively. And if you do it aggressively, what happens is you get early. And if you get early, if the market bounces back quick, you make more. But if the market doesn't bounce back quick, you make it through. And if you do it with you got to be fair. You need to be in a way that you're forthright and honest. But if you do it that way, you prepare yourself for what's coming and you can get really, really ahead of it.
Love it.
All right. Focus on sales. Sales fixes everything. Everything else is irrelevant. Focus on sales. Sales immediately leads to revenue. Revenue fixes every freaking problem. At home, think about, how do we make money? How do I stay employed? How do I continue to get a check coming in every month? Sales is different if you're like running your household, but that's stay employed. Like, you might have a shitty job that you really want to quit. Now's probably not the time because unemployment's going up. So those are things that you can really focus on. I think you can tell when we start getting into this, I got more excited and my pace of talking went way up. Have urgency. This is actually, it's not exciting, it's not fun, but when you have a plan, it's easier to move quick, and having urgency is critical during this period of time.
I think the only thing I'll add to that is, yes, I can hear the passion in your voice when you talk about this. That's incredibly important if you lead a team. A team needs to see the urgency on the face. And it's okay to tell your team, I'm a little nervous. I'm a little scared, because status quo is sort of undefeated with humans, and they don't want to change. They don't want to break out of their status quo. Look, Frank's employees don't have $600,000 of overhead to keep them up in the middle of the night. Frank does. So, but they do have a responsibility to keep Cava Company thriving and alive. And they have to feel his sense of urgency that this is not 2021. Guys, this is a different world we're walking into. We're tightening our belts. That, just like we talked about, the Google CEO told people, we're bringing the parties down. We're bringing the travel down. Discretionary spending is getting cut. They have to feel that kind of urgency out of the leader of the organization, or they're going to fight you all along the way. You want to get advocates behind you saying, okay, we got you. You're right. We need to hunker down and figure out how to get through this next year.
So you brought up something, this is not on my list, but I want to talk about it. I was going to do it at the end. I'm going to do it now. Urgency is part of it, but transparency is important. I'm going to tell a story. So I had to fire somebody last week, and I was shaking while I was doing it. I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to be there. I hated it. As a human being, I freaking hated it. And it felt awful, but I had to do it. And when I shared with my team why I let the person go, I told them, like, while I'm having this conversation with you, I'm physically, like, I'm almost ill and my body is shaking. I don't want to be here. I don't like it. I don't want to have to. But you work here because I'm willing to. And I'm going to do the little things ahead because I think I'm a good leader and I want to stay ahead of the market. But I have to go through the whole human experience just like you do. I got to think about it. It's hard, but we make good decisions because we're willing to make the hard decisions. And I have 2 young kids. We have a babysitter who was over the house one day, and my oldest son was being a complete and total shit. And I got in his face and I reprimanded him and I made him apologize. And a few minutes went by, and then the babysitter said to me, she goes, "That was really nice. Thank you for doing that. Like, why did you do that?" And my response to her is, I'm not here to make friends. I'm here to raise men. And he was acting like a shit. And that's where it starts at 3. You discipline now. That's what happens in business, is you have to take those things. You have to do those disciplines. And I can't guarantee what's going to happen. But what I can tell you is I'm going to work as hard as humanly possible to be ahead of it. And if you have that level of honesty, I think it really goes a long way with people that you work with, because they're scared too, and they don't know what's happening. And it's your job to try and synthesize it and share it.
Yeah. And I think a lot of managers are not transparent because they don't know the answer. And I think by being transparent, what Frank doesn't mean is give them all the answers. It's okay. Transparency sometimes is saying, I don't know. I'm pretty nervous about next year. This could get hairy, right? If rates go to 8-9%, throw out all the bets and all the strategies that worked in the past we got to figure out. That's okay to say. But it's also important to tell your staff that sitting around and worrying about it isn't going to make us safer. What we need to do is focus on what we control today in today's market. And I'm going to go back to something you said that I loved. We learned that from our former employer too. We don't make the market, we serve it.
That's right.
We serve today's market, not yesterday's market, or not the market we wish it was. We serve today's market, which means we face reality
quickly. And you talk through it. That's it. All right. Next, number 8 on my list, know your resources. This is critical. Like when I typed this up, Ian and I didn't have a podcast. He still had a job, but he was one of my resources. Other people that I talked to, a lot of my resources, my attorneys are my resources. You have to, like what I did this morning is I came up with a plan with my entire team that gets me out of my email. And I said, I may actually shut email off and not have one anymore because I can't run this business effectively sitting behind a fucking computer. I need to be on the phone, talking to people in the field, doing things. I need to be in it, feel it, touch it, understand it. I need to be going to lunches, not expensive lunches, but lunches with people and understand, like, what are you seeing? What are you feeling? What are you hearing? That is how you lead through a recession. It's because you know your resources, you talk to your resources, you gain information, and then you synthesize it quickly and you take action. But that is an absolutely critical thing.
The only thing I'll add there, and I love this one, Frank, is broaden your network. What you don't want is a bunch of people getting together with confirmation bias. If
yes.
Your whole network is your company, they're experiencing the same stuff that you are. They have the same worries you have. You get into this group think, broaden your network to people that are outside of your industry, or maybe they're in your industry, but they work for a different company in a different market. Get as many different viewpoints as you can so you're not overly influenced by one group or one individual or one person. Talk to as many people as you can in as many industries as you can to formulate your opinions, because that your gut at some point will start to understand this is the way the wind is blowing and here's what I should do.
Very much so. And we've talked about this before, but like having friends is critical, and it's hard to just go out and make friends, but it's easier to find masterminds or networking groups or places where there's people that are similarly minded, but are potentially looking at things from a different perspective. Like I went to a conference and everybody was insanely bullish in May. And Ian and I talked about, this just sounds like everybody's drinking the same Kool-Aid. This, be skeptical. Like, and if you can't find anybody else that's got your voice, keep looking until you find people who think like you do. Like Michael Lewis wrote a book called The Big Short. And in The Big Short, he chronicles a guy by the name of Michael Burry. And it's fascinating. Like Michael Burry has now become a cult hero, but Michael Burry has one real eye and one glass eye. And what's ironic about what Michael Lewis did is he found the one-eyed man, and he was the only person who could see what was happening. It's fascinating. But that's what we're talking about knowing your resources and being broad. Are you cool if I move to the next one?
Yep.
All right. Avoid stupidity. Don't go for the home run in this time of market. Go for the safe, secure bet. If you think you can knock it out of the park, but it's going to take every bit of what you have in you to swing, there's a chance you strike out. Don't. Get on base. Just do the smart thing that you couldn't look back and go, God, that was dumb. Avoid stupidity.
I think I would say a different way of saying avoid stupidity is I would say look for high floor investments of your capital and not so much high ceiling. I think when a market changes to a recession, the floor should be more important to you. That Warren Buffett's rule is, my rule number one of business is do no harm. And number two, don't forget rule number one.
Yeah.
So do no harm. Look for high ceiling, even though the return's not as good, high floor, not high ceiling.
So number 10 is survival of the fittest. This is a game it's an unforgiving game. So with your house and your family and your household, you got to be in charge of it. And if you don't pay your mortgage, the bank is going to eventually come for you. There's real consequences. There's real consequences in business. So you got to be very mindful of the fact that there are real consequences, and not everyone gets out of this thing alive. So you've got to you got to take this seriously, and you need to do the right things to get through it. And sometimes survival is what it needs to be, not necessarily luxury. You got to get through it in a way that you can make it to the other side.
I would just say the only thing I would add on your number 10, Frank, is embrace this market for what it is. Expect that you're going to be asked to do some tough things. Expect that you're going to work a little harder for the same amount of money. Expect that people are going to ask you to cut your fees, cut your bills, cut your revenue. People are going to expect that you're going to lose a few customers. You expect these things are going to happen. Don't think you're going to be the one person who gets through this next 18 months unscathed. Everyone's going to feel a little bit of pain. So expect and plan for it and go into this with your eyes wide open and ready to pivot and ready to change.
The other thing that you can expect is whenever we decide to record a podcast, someone around here has to get out a hacksaw or a gun. The last time we recorded, there was someone walking on the roof. Now there's someone behind me with I'm not even sure what type of human carnage is going on back there.
Yes. Well, and along those lines, we can expect that you, as our listeners, are going to continue to tune in, because we are one of the few free resources where you can get this kind of hard-hitting journalism into the minds of a brilliant CEO like Frank. Frankie, you did a great job. And for our subscribers, if you liked this, please give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. And if you are new, click that subscribe button and listen for more brilliant insight into careers, economies, and investing. Frank, do you have anything else to add, you son of a...
Ian, it's always a pleasure.
Hey, good to see you, buddy.